Hello, Jacquie Edwards here. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today we're talking about maintenance. Now, this can be a really confusing topic for people. It seems like it should be quite simple, maintenance, whatever, but who pays for the maintenance in a rent-to-rent deal? Who's responsible for making sure it gets done? Now, there's kind of a common theme around this is, if the fridge breaks, who fixes it? If the washing machine breaks, who fixes it? If a tenant destroys the furniture, who fixes it? If the boiler breaks or a water pipe bursts, who's the one that's responsible? So if you're asking any of those questions, then this is the video for you. Because I am going to give you a couple of options. But the very first thing is you can decide. It's up to you who pays for all of these things. It's your choice. This is your business. You can run it any way you want. So you can decide who's paying for maintenance, who's paying for fridge repairs, white goods, boiler breaks, everything. That is up to you. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, great, it's up to me. Well, then I for sure want to push that off and the landlord will pay for everything. Because why do I want to pay for it if the landlord will pay for it? So if it's up to me, I want the landlord to pay for it. And that is really great, and that can just totally possible. But then you just need to make sure what is the value that you're offering in return. Because you have to offer value. Like rent to rent, like any business, you have to offer value to get paid. And the landlord ultimately is the one paying you because you're making money off of his property. Because he could just go out and do all of this himself. So what's stopping him from doing all of this himself? He's got some kind of problem or something holding him back from that. And you need to figure out what that is. So what are you going to offer him in return for him giving you his property, for him doing all the maintenance and paying for everything? So really think about how are you structuring your business to make it super simple for that landlord to say, yes, he's on board, he wants to go ahead and do it. Because if you go to him and say, hey, I am going to pay you less than market rent. You're going to have to do all of the maintenance and cover all of the costs and, I'll manage your property. That might be a bit of a struggle to sell that. Whereas if you went to that landlord and you were like, hey, I understand you're really struggling getting the right tenants in your property. Your last few tenants have left on a bad note. They've had some arrears. They've left the place in a mess. And I know it's really hard to manage a property when you live 50 miles away. Every time something happens, you've got to make that long drive. There's always traffic, and it always happens at like the worst possible time. So what I can do is I can make sure that you don't have to worry about any of that. You don't have to worry about tenants not paying rent because I take care of all that. I'm the one guaranteeing your rent. So I'll make sure that you get paid every single month. And I'm taking care of the tenants. So I'm making sure everything stays clean, everything stays tidy. And I'm doing all the maintenance. So if there's any problems, I'm the one that's going to the property. And I'm the one that's making sure things get fixed. And I'm answering to the tenants. You'll have to cover all the costs just like you normally would. So you have to take care of, your insurance. You have to pay for your mortgage. You have to cover the cost of like those day-to-day maintenance items. But I'm the one that's, taking care of everything, making sure it's all running smoothly. So I will pay you, £1,000 every single month, and I'll take all the worry and pressure off of you. That's a little bit easier to sell that to the landlord. They can really see what they're getting, especially if you've been able to drill down and, identify the problems the landlord has. What don't they enjoy about this property? What problems have they had in the past with their tenants, with their other letting agents, with the distance that they live from there, whatever kind of problems that they've had, how are you solving them? How are you making those problems disappear with your rent-to-rent solution? And the better you can kind of zoom in and focus on that, the more room you have for negotiating. So if you can solve all of his other problems over here, then yeah, well, he might as well pay for the maintenance. I mean, he's already paying for the maintenance, so what's the difference? He's already doing it, and you're solving all these other problems, so it's a win-win situation. Now, if his problem is that he doesn't do maintenance because he can't afford it, then it might be a little harder sell to be like, you have to do all the maintenance. But if you take away all of these other problems and maybe all of these other costs of, no rent arrears and all of that stuff, then yeah, he's got the money for maintenance. So yeah, just keep paying it as normal. No problem there. So That's one way of doing it. And again, you can totally negotiate that if you want the landlord to pay for it. Now, in my business, in my rent to rents, I actually cover all of the maintenance myself. And this might be because I'm a little bit of a control freak, but I like to have that control. I like to be able to pick who's doing the maintenance. Is it, an engineer I've used and I trust? How quickly are they doing that maintenance? Because the tenants are calling me. Something's broken, they're calling me to fix it, and not the landlord. So he doesn't have quite as much of an incentive to get things fixed quickly versus me. When the tenants are calling me and complaining to me, I want to make sure somebody's getting it fixed, and I want to make sure it's getting fixed to the right standard, because not every landlord knows the right engineers. They don't know the right people to get things fixed. They're just gonna find somebody on Gumtree that's super cheap and call it a day, because they're not the ones that are going to deal with the problem after. Whereas I know I'm the one that's going to get all those tenant phone calls. And I'm the one that if things don't get fixed properly and quickly, the tenants are going to be moving out. And I'm the one that's going to be losing money. So I like to be in charge of the maintenance. It also gives me another kind of bit of negotiation, because I'm saying, I'm going to take over all the maintenance. I'm even going to pay for it. So, you're going to save all of this money, all of this hassle, all of this struggle. So it's like a no-brainer to sign up for me, because I'm going to maintain your house for you. What? So, and I stay in control of everything. Of course, in doing that, I can negotiate a lower monthly rent with the property owner. So I would expect to pay quite a bit below market rent, because I'm taking on all of the risk and I'm doing all of the work. But in exchange for that, the landlord should be happy with a lower rent, because he's going to be kind of quids in, or, worried about even, because I've paid for all the maintenance. So another option is, I know some of my students, they'll say, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, I will pay the first, £50 or first £100 of maintenance every month. So that way, you're not being hassled by every little tiny thing that breaks. I'm not constantly calling you, when somebody locks themselves out and we have to replace the lock or whatever it is. We'll cover that first kind of 50 quid. Anything after that, so any of the bigger stuff that doesn't happen very often, that's the stuff we'll come to you for. And just like normal, you'll just pay for that. But we can arrange all the engineers and make sure it gets fixed well. We'll just deduct that from the rent. As easy as that. So that gives you a couple of options. You can negotiate so that they pay for everything. You can cover everything yourself and then in return negotiate paying them a lower monthly rent. Or you can, agree a set amount every month that you'll pay the maintenance up to that amount and they'll cover anything after that. So remember, it's all up to you and how you want to run your business. I suggest you pick one way and do it the same for every single property. Because if some properties you're paying the first £50, some properties you're paying all of it, some properties you're paying none of it, as your property portfolio grows, it's going to get more and more confusing. So you'll have to remember which property is which. You start to build a team. They have to remember which property is which property do we pay for, which property do they pay for, how are we invoicing them, and it just gets complicated. So pick one way that you feel comfortable and confident doing for every single one of your properties and move forward with it that way. So hopefully that's helped. Hopefully that's giving you some ideas of what to do with your maintenance and your rent to rents and how to negotiate that with your landlords. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.